Я не знаю, почему ты не можешь прочитать свои слова. У тебя был сценарий все это время, а ты сидишь и просто агонизируешь в своей голове. Не думай, пожалуйста, что я злюсь на тебя. Я просто хочу отснять эту сцену. Она задерживает весь фильм. Окей. Почему бы нам опять не потренироваться? Я прочитаю тебе твой текст, так как я хочу, чтобы ты произнес свои слова. Тебе не нужно выглядеть таким замученным, просто задумавшимся. Думай, что ты делаешь. Да ты и так знаешь, мы репетировали на прошлой неделе. Окей, давай начнем снова. Я не хотел писать этот сценарий.
During the shooting of the short film Delivery in mid-2008, actor Danila Antonov fell suddenly into speechlessness and refused to deliver his lines into the camera. Despite protracted efforts at coercion by director Mariana Magrodumova, Mr. Antonov persisted in his silence, and eventually the project was abandoned. At an interview given some months later, Mr. Antonov was pressed to give his reasons for the silence which caused the project to collapse. He explained how he had come vehemently to disagree with the predicament of his character and the aims of the project in general, stating that there was no room to develop any authentic understanding of subjectivity due to the constant encroachment of clichés employed in the screenplay. He complained that the duality of freedom and imprisonment was portrayed with a naive disregard as to the complexities of the subject, that the game of chess was a trite symbol, and that whoever conceived of such a formulaic treatment had never had a real human experience in their life. In his critique, Mr. Antonov said that his character had neither the capacity for freedom or the means to act with the inexplicable, often opaque reasons that he associated with subjectivity. It occurred to him during the shoot that he should take responsibility for the future of his character and seek a means of liberating him from the narrative. Silence appeared to be the best answer to his mind, and thus the film was left unfinished. Perhaps we should see it as ironic that both the concept for the film and the script were written by Mr. Antonov himself, and that, in falling silent, he had done nothing more than bow to yet another cliché of subjectivity. And that concludes this week's series of lectures on Klossowski's concept Le Fond Inéchangeable. Next week on Encounters, we look at Sartre, and in particular, we will be discussing his famous statement, existence precedes and rules over essence. The time is 11:32. We now continue our four-part series examining the architectural uncanny. This week, we look at the impact which phenomenology has had on the cinema. standing in front of an ordinary, four-walled building, one is aware that it has four walls, but one can perceive only two of them at any one time. Perhaps also we cannot perceive any of the interior of the building whatsoever, but we must assume that it has one. The two far sides of the building, which cannot be immediately apprehended, are instead replaced by a series of logical inferences which may or may not also be informed by memory or imagination. At any rate, what we can immediately see in place of those two inferred walls is the logical construction of reality beyond the bounds of our sensory experience. What we are not suggesting here is that perhaps the far side of the building does not exist for us. We are instead investigating the subject who perceives the building, for we must also infer that it is we who are experiencing and inferring it, and that we can have knowledge of ourselves. The importance to be drawn from the observation of our understanding of this hypothetical building in relation to the subject of the uncanny is the premise of the walls themselves and their concrete construction within the mind of the observer. For we must note that more than two walls are required at any one time for both keeping a subject outside or for keeping one in. Why is it that she cannot access the house in which the messenger resides? Is it for the same reasons that we, her observers, cannot gain access to her motives? And we must ask how such a character can relate to the concept of freedom if there is no inside to break into or to break out of. This two-dimensional character repels any kind of understanding, and yet she is the essence of the inexchangeable inwardness of the self. And thus the viewers of the film are left hanging without the prospect of a conclusion, and any interest in the heroine or her situation can only have been wasted, just as there is now nobody left to listen to this radio program.
Все готово? Начинаем? Okay. My name is Tristilia. I am, or rather, I was close friend of Danila and Marianne. I guess I knew them pretty well, and I will try and describe how they were when I last saw them. Actually, I think I was the last person to see them before they disappeared. It was like this. I was having a party on New Year's Eve at my house, and lots of my friends came, including Marianne and Danila. Everyone was quite happy. Some people were laughing about silly things, and we were all drinking champagne at midnight. You know, that kind of thing. It was a very good party as far as I remember, and everyone was having a nice time, except Marianne and Danila, who were quiet and sitting by themselves all evening. You see, we were planning to premiere the latest video's delivery and Blackmail at the party, but it seemed that they were not happy about it. How can I say? They were worried whether it was the right occasion. But I was really enthusiastic and insisted, so they introduced the videos as the first two parts of a bigger project. But they had not made the third part yet. Well, afterwards, people seemed to give the impression that it was all a bit heavy mood for that evening. And I thought, like, maybe I should not have been so insistent. A couple of people were sarcastic and saying that they should try and lighten up and not to be so very serious. To be honest with you, it did not go down all that well. But then more friends kept on arriving from other parties around town, and I forgot all about the whole thing. I was quite drunk by that time, you know. Later I went to look for them, but I couldn't find them. And I just assumed they had left. And that was the last time I saw them. I spent weeks afterwards trying to get in touch, but they wouldn't answer their phones or emails, Then I went to their house, but it seemed to be empty. There was a pile of letters on the doorstep. I got really upset because I thought it was all my fault. But looking back, I think I was just being hard on myself. I do that sometimes. And then I kept on thinking about their last videos and started seeing this weird irony of it all. I tell you now that they were looking for an excuse not to make the third part of their film, and I gave them that excuse. They were obsessed with questions of free choice, but in the end it was all talk and no action. I feel a bit stupid because I respected them so much with all their highfalutin ideas, but when it came down to it, they were just idealists. Well, I admit, I'm still angry because of what they put me through. And who knows, perhaps they did succeed in doing something worthwhile after all. But I can't help my own feelings, you know. They've put me in this position.
When I learned about the mysterious disappearance of Mariana Magolodumover and Danila Antonov in January 2009, I was coincidentally writing a paper entitled The Disappearance of Free Will that was to be presented to the Institute of Film and Video Studies in Copenhagen. I suppose in hindsight, the title of the paper appears rather ironic. Although I did not know them personally, I think that we can grasp a fair approximation of their intent. Whether it was a statement of some kind, a simple stunt for publicity, something more ominous, or perhaps even a development. Through what I would call a speculative analysis of some recent works. Bearing in mind that freedom of choice is the core subject of the final pair of videos made prior to their disappearance, we can no doubt recover their motivations from an inspection of what they were contemplating at the time. And I think the germination of such thoughts can clearly be seen in earlier works, as I will demonstrate here. For example, if we look briefly at a video clip made early in 2008, I think, yes, 2008, which comes from a long series of untitled, unreleased vignettes, we can see Antonov dressed in typical apparel digging at the roots of a number of trees in a small wood. This scene can be likened to any number of fairy tales or crime thrillers where there is gold hidden in a wood or a field, the location of which is undisclosed. However, I prefer the idea that this is an emulation of Diogenes of Sinopius, walking with his lamp in the midday, trying to find the honest man. What Antonov is looking for is himself, and he digs at the root structure of the tree of knowledge to find it. But in such scenes, when it is either Marianna or Daniela appear on screen alone, we must consider the role of the other, who cannot be seen, but through whose eyes we are seeing it. Perhaps what Daniela has lost here is Marianna. Perhaps Marianna wrote the scene, and Daniela is her supplicant, etc., etc. Regrettably, then, we stray into that tedious, labyrinthine territory of perhapses that now we have come to associate with these two artists. And we cannot help but imagine how uncertain they were of each other, and how dubious, is that the correct term, how dubious their relationship must have been. I personally am of the belief that this disappearance, as you call it, or evaporation into phenomenological uncertainty, brings their project to full circle, or vicious circle if you like. Unable to continue in such bad faith or mauvaise foi for one another, they sought a means through this insufficient motive to expand these suspicions out onto reality, and through a renewed conceptual faithfulness made the transition into good faith and broke the repetition of the vicious circle. Evidence of this can be seen in a protean form in clip number 33 from that aforementioned series of untitled clips, in which we see both Marianna and Daniela in front of the camera having what appears to be a yawning competition. This humorous action, whilst it might immediately appear as a symptom of lethargy from constantly repeating the same conversations with each other, actually signalizes something quite different, in that we already know of Magadumova's interest in Heraclitus. We cannot fail to notice the concept of the void of Dasein, of being, the yawning chasm of primordial chaos, which maintains no pattern, no determinism, nothing but becoming and overcoming. Such yawning and gulping of air, for me, implies the action of mustering oneself to overturn a pernicious worldview, a mustering that might even require a disappearance into the yawning void of chaos. And, as you can see, disappear is exactly what has happened.
When I heard through my sources that a documentary was being made about the disappearance of Mariana Magadumová and Danila Antonov, I resolved almost at once to record a little speech about the business to send to the production company, in the hopes that it would be included in the final material for the video. But on what strength is my testimony admissible to aid the faithful viewer to a conclusion? I thought long and hard on the subject. I smoked numerous cigars to assist me, and realized that, in actual fact, I am an outstanding witness. Being one who has never fully appeared to anybody, I have a curious predilection for the subject of disappearances. Consider, if you will, the following hypothesis. If a person were to conceal their identity, indeed went to great lengths to appear in a completely different way than they and everybody else had been accustomed to, it could certainly be said that that person had disappeared. Indeed, we might venture further and suggest that a person is nothing more than their appearance. Let us then imagine that this subterfuge was exposed, say in the fashion of some dreary tabloid article. We would certainly no longer consider that the person in question had disappeared, but had only changed the way in which they had appeared. Then we could legitimately say that it was only the subterfuge that had disappeared and not the person, and that the term disappearance is nothing more than a misnomer. Let us then imagine that this subterfuge was never discovered, and furthermore, that the individual employing it grew so accustomed to it that they forgot all about what they had done. Might we then speak about disappearances without error, inasmuch as the subterfuge has come to be its own truth? I'm sorry if I've become tedious now with my speculations, but this is a subject that I have much interest in, and I shall try now to refer to the case of the disappearance in question. To my knowledge, the two videos which you have just seen, Delivery and Blackmail, were originally conceived to have a third and concluding part in which the protagonists, who have up until now been seen only in isolation, would reveal a way in which a relationship could be forged between them despite the impasse lodged by their difficult subjectivity. And though at the idea stage these works might have held the very immediate purpose of a reconciliation, in practice clearly something changed, because disappearance became the strategy that was brought into play. We can almost imagine that speculation was the desired result of their disappearance, because everyone knows that when somebody disappears, tongues begin to wag. But if we sincerely believe that a person is nothing more than an appearance, what can we hope to gain by asking each other questions of their failure to appear? No, it was not speculation that was the desired or actual result of their action. I shall only make one further remark on the subject of this disappearance before I insist that the viewer decide for themselves what the most fruitful attitude to employ will be. You will of course remember that I said Mariana and Danila had originally planned to make a 3-part video, but were unable to make the third part due to whatever reason that we can distill in this documentary. It will not therefore take a great deal of imagination to see that their disappearance has caused this documentary to come into existence, and thus provide a third part to the project by proxy. Thus, the concealed motive upon which we speculate, this suprasensible irony in which what is seen can only be seen through what has disappeared, may have been nothing more than the intended third part and conclusion to the project. Therefore, we should have no further cause for speculation. Everything is in order.